He calls games locally here for the Chargers radio network, but you all know and love him as @MoveTheSticks on social media, and also that great pod with him and Bucky Brooks for the NFL Media Group. And my friend from the Combine and the Draft to be able to spend a ton of time with Daniel Jeremiah, including right here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, DJ?
I'm doing great, Rich. I had one of those moments today where I was like, and so it begins, working on my first mock draft of the year, which I will turn in. So that'll be up, I think, later in the week. But like, I just spent my morning with like an hour looking at the Chargers going, do I want Roma Dunze? But I don't know, Brock Bowers. I know, do you take a tight end that early? And then, gosh, I could take Terrion Arnold, who I think is the best corner. I mean, and here we go.
Well,
it's off.
I guess it depends who the head coach is going to be there. So who does Jim Harbaugh want? Is that the way I should say it? Should I phrase it that way, Daniel?
Of that hour process, I would say 20 minutes was spent trying to climb into the head of Jim Harbaugh, which, as you know, is a dangerous exercise.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm thinking it feels like, I don't want to use the word inevitable. That's too strong. But doesn't it just feel like is there a more perfect pairing? I mean, he's got history with the organization there. He's got the quarterback in place. He can get in there. I think even though they have some salary cap decisions to make, I think they could get that thing up and running pretty quick. He gets back to the West Coast. He's, mission accomplished. The banner is flying in Ann Arbor. It feels like this is a really good match here.
Unless he wants to go back to Michigan and rumors flying everywhere about what he really wants. Nobody knows, as you said, about climbing in his head, but not to turn you into an information man. You're more of an all-22 and obviously a talent evaluator, but you hear anything about coming out of the building about the conversation they had with Harbaugh goes well? Anything that you're hearing on that front?
No, I haven't heard anything since he had his conversation. Now, one of the things I had seen that was put out there, which was, obviously he's going to want to be the highest paid guy and he's going to want full control, over everything. And I talked to people, that are tight with Harbaugh that said that's a mischaracterization. Like he's going to want somebody that he trusts, but he's not going to be somebody who's going to be, making every decision and wanting to secure that power. He just wants somebody to partner with that he really likes and trusts.
Okay, and so the Chargers are still going about their business, right? Like Dan Quinn, I hear, is coming on their, on their radar screen. They're going to interview with him. But so who do you think how would the Harbaugh-Herbert fit for you? How do you think that would work, Dan?
Well, Rich, I remember during my scouting days watching and evaluating a really, really big, athletic, smart quarterback up in Palo Alto who was paired with a coach who believed in the physical run game and then only, asking him to make those plays in those key moments with his athleticism and giving him a lot at the line of scrimmage where he could make checks and get you into the right spot. And it worked out quite well. So I would think that if he was going to draw up a quarterback that he would like to coach and work with, it's hard not to see that as a really, really good match there with Herbert.
Daniel Jeremiah here on the Rich Eisen Show. Before we turn to, the talent evaluation portion and everything else with the kids available in the draft, I'd love to get your 2 cents on the Philadelphia Eagles. Biggest head scratcher for me is what in the world happened from the beginning of December on. What's your analysis of what took the Philadelphia Eagles from 10-1 all the way to hardly winning a game and one and done?
I didn't recognize the team. I didn't. It was bizarre. I can't remember a year like this where you've had a team that was rolling like that. And I know some people were saying, wow, they're winning some of these close games. I remember seeing tweets, this is the worst 10-1 team that I've ever seen because they've played so many close games. And at the time, I was sitting there thinking, okay, you know what? They're just biding their time to get to the postseason. Just stack the wins. It doesn't matter about beauty points, and they'll kind of get it figured out and get it rolling. And it never happened. And, the word trust just came to me when I was watching them. Like, there just doesn't seem to be any trust. And I don't know if that's trust in your fellow players, if that's, trust in your coaches or the scheme or the play call or what it is. But when you're changing course mid-year on the defensive side of the ball, they never got that figured out. There's way too much talent for them to be that bad. And to be honest with you, just looked disinterested, especially in that game against Tampa. It was an atrocious tackling performance. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know how the heck you can go from where they were last year, looking like they had the best roster in the NFL and just barely missing a championship, to come back and play like they played last night. I just used the word unrecognizable, Rich. I didn't know what that was.
But how does that happen? I don't understand how it happens.
Well, you lose both coordinators, and that they talked about that on the broadcast a lot. That's a big deal. You had some guys who got a little older. But to be honest, I'm watching the game last night, and two of the oldest guys were two of the best players on the field. Kelsey's still playing at a high level. Brandon Graham's still getting a bunch of pressure. Fletcher Cox was active. I don't know. It is a mystery. I don't even know how to explain it.
So then how does it work in a building after something like this happens? How does the evaluation go down? How does an owner get involved? I mean, what's your best guess through that prism, what's happening in Philadelphia?
Well, they have to have an honest conversation, and they will. And having worked in that building, and I think Jeffrey Lurie is one of the best owners in the NFL. I think Howie's one of the best GMs in the NFL. I think they'll take their time here. They'll evaluate the situation. There's going to be, I would imagine, massive changes, at whether or not that goes all the way up to the head coach. I don't know, but I would imagine you're probably going to see two new coordinators. You're going to see a whole new, scheme brought in there. And then they have to have the conversation, okay, with this group of veterans that we have, that we were kind of one last ride, is it time to really kind of, usher in a new era and move on from a lot of guys, some of which still have some football left in them? That's going to have to be a really, really honest conversation.
And what would you ascribe the Dallas Cowboys having yet another playoff disaster befall them? What's your analysis there, Daniel?
They just play so tight in the playoffs, man. It's just and you say it sounds generic, but they just haven't handled pressure. Like they are winning these games in the regular season. They're stacking these 12-win seasons because they have enough players. They're good at the key positions. The only way I can explain it is they get absolutely crushed by pressure. And once that first touchdown that they were down turned into the second one, and then the next, you could just feel them suffocating while you're watching that. So, whether or not, again, we see a head coaching change or not, they've got to find a way to be more loose when they get to the postseason, because that's about as tight of a team as I've seen.
So when it, how do you do that? I don't know. I don't know. Ayahuasca? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I think you probably less cold tub and more jacuzzi. I don't know. It's got to be, try everything.
Daniel Jeremiah here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, so if I had turned to you while we're watching the quarterbacks work out at the Combine last year, and we were, on occasion, jaw open, hitting the floor, watching C.J. Stroud work out. If I had told you that he and Jordan Love would be divisional round playoff quarterbacks, and their numbers in making their teams wild card winners would be the exact same, with the exception of 2 more passing yards for C.J. Stroud, you'd have told me what? Dan.
I would have said that's you're maybe 2 years too early. We were there together. Like, I believe in the talent for both these guys, and that throwing session, we said it at the time, was the best that I've ever seen at the Combine. But there's a difference between, just being a passer and a thrower and playing the quarterback position at the elite level that we've seen from Stroud and Jordan Love, the same. So to have that limited experience, and you say, okay, we've got the talent. So then that comes in flashes, and that's the young talent is inconsistent. There's highs, there's lows. These guys are playing at an elite level, and they're just steady as can be. They're low heartbeat. There's no up and down to what they're doing. I didn't have words for Stroud. I got asked about that right after the game, and I'm like, I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen somebody play the position that well. Not just, oh, he made a play, like down in, down out, on balance, feet, eyes connected, getting through progressions, bing, 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 delivering the ball accurately, whether it required velocity, whether it required touch, over the top balls, dry balls. He did everything. I don't know where you go, man, you know what? He can get better here. Where? I don't know. I don't know how you get better from what he's doing now. It's ridiculous.
Wow. I mean, that is as high praise as I've ever heard you give somebody.
I've never seen
22. Really, he's that much of an outlier. is what you're saying.
Again, when you see young players at that position, Josh Allen's a great example, and he's continued to just grow and become this freak of nature that's probably the most talented player in the NFL right now.
Right.
But with Josh, when he was young, you remember, like, you'd have those unbelievable plays, and you have the low lows, and you still see a little bit of that in his play now. I've never seen a guy at this age be so consistent and just not putting the ball in jeopardy, making big plays, making the right play, and looking like he's just got it all under control. I've never seen it.
And then Love, too, since week 11, 19 touchdowns, 1 interception. That's it. And what did you see out of him against the Cowboys, Daniel?
He made it look easy. He did. I mean, I was watching that game, and I was thinking about, if we are in a copycat league, which and when we start talking about draft stuff, we'll talk about how one thing one year impacts the next thing the next year. But when you watch Mahomes do what he's done throughout his career, after been given a little bit of time to sit and watch and develop, and now you see Jordan Love, who they did not put in the microwave, they put him in the oven, and you look and see how that's turned out. I wonder if now we see some other teams that maybe if you're the Rams and Stafford, you think Stafford can roll for another 2 years and play at an elite level. Maybe they sit there and go, you know what, we're going to take a quarterback here with a first round pick, something we never had before, and let him sit and learn behind Matthew Stafford for a couple of years. Maybe we're going to see some teams try and use this approach, because those are two good examples of it working pretty darn well.
Well, I was going to ask you how that was going to be my last question on this subject matter, is how Love and Stroud's performance in these playoffs is going to be a copycat for blueprint for others to push quarterbacks higher in the draft. And you're saying maybe Love, being a guy who sat for all that time, that's going to be a copycat blueprint for some?
Well, I mean, you've got two examples, right? You've got Stroud, who gets thrown right into the mix and is doing stuff we've never seen before. I would say that's going to be tougher to duplicate. I don't know that I've seen that very often. I think you have seen a blueprint with guys being a little bit patient and then getting them to become masters of their system and understand defenses better and understand the NFL game, and then having more success. I think there's also, you think about the things that have went well, and you can think about some other examples of which you might be familiar of, guys maybe in hindsight got put out there when they weren't ready, and it didn't work out. So, it's going to be fascinating to see. We've got a lot of teams that need a quarterback that don't have one. And then we've got a handful of teams with really good quarterbacks that are getting towards the end. So, man, we're going to have a lot of fun talking about these quarterbacks as we head towards the spring.
Daniel Jeremiah here on the Rich Eisen Show. So what do you think the Bears are going to do with first overall status again? And this time around, it's Caleb Williams who's sitting right there. I'm assuming that's the guy, right? I mean, we're seeing other mocks already where Drake May could be the guy, but I know I'm asking you multiple questions at once, but what do you think the Bears are going to do here, DJ?
I think it'll be Caleb Williams. I do. I went back and over the last week, I've kind of been going through quarterbacks. And when I went back and watched him, I had done the early season stuff where the schedule wasn't as daunting and he was having a ton of success as he had the entire year in 22. And then, a bunch has been made about his numbers down the stretch this year and the quality of opponent, and he didn't play as well. And when I went and watched it, Rich, I came away thinking, you know what, that is one of the worst interior offensive lines I've seen in a long time. They were rushing 3 and getting immediate pressure on him. He was under duress constantly, which did lead to him forcing some things. There were some bad habits that creeped in there. But I came away with the totality of studying him, thinking this guy has got some rare ability, man. He has got an unbelievable amount of horsepower in terms of how he can generate velocity with his arm, what he can do with the force with his legs, the creativity we all know about. I just think, every quarterback has some risk. Do I wish he, played on time a little bit more? Sure. But I think you can, and Mahomes is the greatest example of that. You can kind of corral that without taking away that magic. And I think he's a rare talent. And I just can't see the Chicago Bears bypassing that.
What did you make of them sticking with Eberflus and bouncing the entire offensive staff? Does that point anything towards what you're saying, Daniel?
Well, I think they've done this now. I was reading about it the other day. They've done this. This would be the third time, right, where they've made changes but kept the head coach. They did that when they selected Trubisky. So they still took a young quarterback. They did the same thing when they selected Fields, and they made head coaching changes after their rookie years, which is not ideal. And then now here we are with the same scenario presenting itself where they make changes but keep the head coach and go draft the rookie quarterback. It's something that's, that they've done. Obviously, different general manager right now with Ryan Poles, but I think the way they finished up, as competitive as they were, they didn't want to completely start over, but knowing they needed some new ideas and some new life on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, certainly if they're going to cash in the first overall selection for themselves this time around and choose Caleb Williams, like that is the franchise. That's the biggest franchise decision any franchise can make. So my question for you is, how do you see this playing out? Because they're going to have to fill the offensive staff first, right?
Yeah.
Then they're going to have to, at some point, flip Justin Fields before the new league year, right? That's the way it's going to have to go. And then that will inform everybody on what their decision with the draft pick's going to be. Correct? That's it?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's the timeline. And then it would come down to, what can they get in return for Justin Fields? And when you start going through the teams, there's needs out there. We have a deep quarterback class, some interesting names, but Justin has gotten better. And I don't, I always feel like in these discussions, everybody wants to make it love one guy, hate the other guy. And no, Justin Fields has done some good things. He's continued to get better. And he's, I believe, going to be one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. And he's going to find a spot and he's get a chance to play and more than likely get paid handsomely. But I think the opportunity to upgrade into a different tier of quarterback is something the Bears can't pass up. So, I think that's the timeline that you laid out, and we'll see what they can fetch for Justin Fields.
Right, and you also start the clock again at year one of a rookie contract, as opposed to have to make a decision after you pick up a fifth-year option at some point on whether you enrich him generationally or not, and how much of a commitment you make. So there's that. Which team do you think would take that on for Fields? I know Atlanta's been mentioned, but we don't know who the coach is there. Would Belichick want Justin Fields? You know what I mean? Like, seriously, don't you think that is a large part of the puzzle that we don't know yet?
I think it's a huge part of it. I'm trying to pull this number up here, by the way. I'll do it. I'll get it to the next time. But I pulled up all the numbers. I had an agency run all the numbers comparing with Fields, what it would be like if he got the Daniel Jones contract, right? Let's just make that the contract.
Okay.
Versus taking the quarterback 1-1. And it's a sizable difference, not in the first year, but as you go through these next years beyond that, it's a huge difference. So I'll send you that. We'll have that discussion later.
In terms of the cap, in terms of what you're putting on your cap. Okay.
100%. Yeah, it's a massive difference. So Atlanta is the team that is, when I look down at and going through the mock draft process and looking at all the teams and studying the individual teams, and I know they don't have a coach yet. We'll see if it is Belichick. It makes a lot of sense to me. I think it would be fun, just using his athleticism with all the skill talent that they have on offense and playing on that surface. Obviously, he goes back home. There's that element of it as well. I would think Belichick, after being what he's been through, would be pretty elated to have Justin Fields out there.
All right, DJ. I mean, my God, so
it's crazy offseason, man.
To discuss. And then there's Marvin Harrison Jr. sitting out there too, right?
And
gosh,
and I mean, Adunze, you saw him that was one where I'm like, Harbaugh maybe got an up close look at somebody that he could be coaching next year with what he saw from Adunze and what he did in that game. So, and all that being said, Rich, the Padres only have one outfielder and they start spring training in a month. I don't know.
Keep the faith, DJ. Keep the faith. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
See you, buddy.
It's the only one and only Daniel Jeremiah at Move the Sticks. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.